Oh, okay. So yeah, let's get started. So Fredrik, thanks for joining us. So we met you out in Berlin. You're part of Binance Labs along with our company. So what are you doing out there, man?
Yeah, so we're doing a startup, obviously. It's an
Thanks for
analytics
that.
startup. So we're two guys based usually in Norway and spending some time in Berlin right now. We're building an analytics tool for Ethereum, and then more specifically, a place where you can very easily work with Ethereum data and do visual graphs and nice things with it, and then share it with the world very easily. So it's a very easy place for anyone to figure out what's happening in Ethereum smart contracts. Really.
Cool. How's it going so far? What's your thoughts of Binance Labs? We can share it with everyone.
Yeah, no, it's been good. It's been good. In many ways, I think it's always good to get the focus of moving somewhere else and being sort of immersed in working. And also, it's been a good experience.
Do you feel incubated?
Yeah, I feel pretty incubated. Yeah. Living together with my co-founder and being with him 16 hours a day, nonstop. It's kind of immersive, yeah. No, but it's good.
Nice. How does Berlin life compare to Norway life?
Well, it's a lot more raw, I would say.
Raw.
I mean, like the whole experience of being in Berlin. There was these day parties yesterday for 1st of May. So we just walked around and there was like speakers and people partying all over, like many different streets. You would just walk around and people dancing all over, and you don't see that too often in Norway.
Well, those were the Labor Day. Were there any protests? I guess.
Yeah.
Warning about them, right?
Yeah. So apparently there's like this weird mix of riots and parties. We didn't actually see the protests, but they were apparently pretty intense as well. So we just biked away, and suddenly saw a lot of people who were like, "Is that a party or a riot? We don't know." But
sounds quintessential Berlin.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, Berlin is very cool, I think, and it's a very affordable big city compared to other major cities in Europe, I would say.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. And so, I mean, you're obviously from Norway. Is this your first time, like, kind of living out of the country?
Absolutely not, actually. So I lived in Sydney, Berkeley, San Francisco, London, and Canada a little bit.
Oh man, so you're a world traveler here.
Yeah, I think it'd be weird if I ever met a European that like didn't really leave his country at all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So
like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
like
anyway,
never going out of its own state, right?
Right. That's exactly what it'd be like. But that's way more common here.
Yeah. So on crypto, I've actually had a few questions for you and Mats because I did data analytics and then I moved into the Ethereum space as well.
Mm-hmm.
How did you guys get into crypto? Especially, is there a big crypto scene up in Norway? or did you get in whenever you were out in Berkeley?
No, it was actually right before Berkeley. It was definitely not because of the big crypto scene in Norway. I got sucked in back in 2015. So it was the last year of my studies, and we did our master thesis and had a bunch of time. So I just spent a lot of time reading about it. And then it was mostly me and engaging with people on the internet. And then these days, there's quite a few people that are interested, but there's not that many companies or people working full time on it. But yeah, I got I have a background in economics, and I got super fascinated by it sort of from that angle initially with the game theory and all these deep questions of what is money and.
So was it more on the political side or more on the tech side that got you interested?
Good question. I maybe would call it like intellectually interesting. Not deeply political, not deeply technical per se. It was more just like this fascinating thing that actually works, which is really, really amazing. So it's not like, I wouldn't say it was me having a problem and finding the solution in Bitcoin. It was more like me stumbling upon something really, really interesting, and then I couldn't stop thinking about it and all the questions it led to with like value and institutions and whatnot.
So what was that? Now, how did that lead to, like, was there a light bulb moment where you you married the data analysis side and your interest in crypto? Like, what led to that?
So actually, so we both have kind of data-ish background. I did a bunch of statistics at school and done some like web analytics stuff before. Mats is a data scientist or was a data scientist. And so jumping a few years ahead, we were working at this big Norwegian company that has a lot of online marketplaces. And we were in like a crypto or blockchain sort of venture experimentation lab there. So we worked on Ethereum stuff together there, did some cool prototypes, and then we realized that it's probably not going to be any major projects happening within the space from this company, which was definitely understandable. It's like still fairly unusable, the whole thing. So like I respect that they didn't want to do a bigger bet on it. And then through like last spring, we started talking about doing something sort of just exploring all kinds of different ideas. And then we landed on the analytics thing and talked to a few DApp teams throughout the summer, realized that they were pretty unsophisticated in terms of data tooling and tracking and all of that. And then we went for it in September last year.
So wait, you were getting paid to experiment with Ethereum?
Yeah, I actually had a pretty...
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah. It was a very cool job, actually. It's I did a bunch of traveling around the company, and so I held something like 40 presentations for all kinds of different groups, like from top level to sort of anyone within the company. So I had a lot of interesting, chats and thinking about blockchain in different aspects. So they have like 7 major publishers in Norway and Sweden. They have 200 daughter companies within this media group that they call it. So there were a lot of different use cases and like a nice little sandbox for me to explore this, try to apply it in real life. But frankly, it was kind of hard.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies do that. I think that was like probably 2016, 2017 was like the year of the sandbox and experimentation with all these companies. And, really most of them have just sort of died out. Because it comes down to like, well, what is a blockchain actually useful for? And, now it's sort of become synonymous with like, at least in a private context, it's just like a really, really slow database. Right. So, like what was sort of your learnings there? Do you think like, where do you see kind of blockchain and maybe even crypto fitting in? Like, do you think it's going to be used by these Fortune 500 institutions, or do you think it's just going to be something different or used more in the crypto Wild West?
Yeah, good question. No, I think it's gonna end up very mainstream, but it's still too radical, too much of a difference. There's so many, you have the UX side of things, the whole like handling private keys and that whole shebang, and then you have all the regulatory stuff, like accepting different types of payment. Like there's so many questions and hurdles that still make it sort of just not that sensible for big companies to approach it, but in like a proper manner. So I think it's going to start at the edges, and then eventually it will make sense just because it like provides better user experience or better, more flexible payment solutions, whatever it might be.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is so this is where I like argue with people, you know, like, so what is the purpose of crypto or of Ethereum? You know, like what, you know, I think you probably saw like Elon Musk tweeted out like, you know, what's the useful thing built on Ethereum, and he had all of these things, you know, like, but what do you think like the use case of Ethereum is? Is it like, I think there's like two sort of camps. There's like the people who think it could be used as this global settlement engine, and then there's people who think it's sort of just like censorship resistant things, like things that are illegal that we can now do and governments can't stop us.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm very excited by programmable money, and I do think that to some extent that relies on the whole censorship resistant thing, because you need to be able to deploy a few lines of Solidity code and know that just like that's going to run, that's going to not be changed by anyone. So you need, I think the whole censorship resistant thing sounds very political, but actually it is kind of needed for this infrastructure to be useful. And then you can build like abstraction layers or less censorship resistant things on top of that for different use cases. But I think you need that base layer to be very robust and easy to trust. And then people can, you know, when they go closer to the end user, they can adapt to the different environments they're in. But to answer your question, I think what I find really fascinating is just also this settlement layer that's global. And I've been thinking a lot about banks and how banks actually work. And I've come to the conclusion that just having thousands of different ledgers on like thousands of different legacy systems that are really do need to talk to each other, like for this system to make sense. Like I really don't give a shit what bank you hold, what bank you guys use, right? But if I want to send you money, it matters. Like I have to, the technology that's facilitating that transfer cares a whole lot about what your, like which bank you are and what country you guys are in. While if I want to send you money, I don't give a shit. I just want to send money. And I think that's very appealing. Like that one ledger, even though it doesn't scale, having this one base system that everybody's on is very, very appealing. And also the fact then that it's made for developers makes it even more exciting. And I think that's probably the thing that's most underrated by banks or the mainstream in general. The fact that you can easily program something on top of this system, which is like the exact opposite of what the legacy banking system is. I think that's extremely powerful and gonna over time show itself as it is. Like,
yeah, I mean, I read your article on. We can link it.
Okay, yeah, cool. Yeah,
blockchain will replace banks, and it was good. You know, but I think that's like you probably had those arguments more in 2017 too, like with the ICO craze. You know, like, do you see there being just like the one currency in the global settlement layer? You know, this is like the big argument of like the Bitcoin maximalists, where you're just going to have one coin to rule them all, and everything else is sort of pushed off to the side, you know. But then here, especially you see it like with proof of work chains, really you can only have one, right? Because security sort of decreases with every one you add.
Yeah.
So like, how do you sort of see that playing out? You know, is there just going to be one, or do you think we'll have more of the local currencies still, and they'll just actually interoperate with each other?
Yeah, I think right now I'm spending very little time on things beyond mostly Ethereum, but also Bitcoin, because of what you're saying. Like for proof of work, you want one super secure or one or very few super secure chains, and beyond that, like you can build the other stuff on top of that instead of trying to force like things into the first layer. Even though, of course, there are exciting projects emerging, but right now I'm more concerned with like getting real users instead of building more fancy tech for the sake of it. So I right now I try to focus on the like applications and things you can do with what we have that's working. And yeah, I don't really see the like you can issue different type of assets on top of Ethereum, right? So if I want Norwegian kroner on a blockchain, I don't really see the big reason for having a proprietary blockchain or like a specified blockchain for Norwegian kroner, because you can put it on the one general system and then have that security.
So yeah, I guess you could see that, you know, because I think there are a lot of benefits to a country having its own currency.
Yeah, sure.
You know, obviously Norway's done pretty well for themselves.
I think it's more due to oil than our currency, but yeah.
But I mean, that's the political argument, you know. So Norway, for instance, like you guys have a little bit of independence there.
Yeah.
And I think there's some arguments for like why that may or may not be a good thing. Obviously it's yeah, I don't know how you feel on the euro, but
I feel like the euro is probably quite bad for quite a few of the member countries, put it that way. Like Greece with their, like you want to have less value, you want to devaluate your currency if your economy is doing shitty. And when you can't do that, you're kind of locked in a pretty bad situation.
Do you think that will limit crypto though? Like, you know, if everyone is on crypto, like, do you think countries will ever move to crypto because then they won't be able to sort of debase their own money supply? Which is, it's a tough question, I think.
Yeah. I think crypto is like just an interesting alternative right now, and it's just cool that competition can you know have its competition in time, like give a more evolutionary process to what is money and what money is most useful, the type of money, and then we'll just see. And I think I don't really see like one single world currency that will rule them all. I think it makes sense to have more like local economies and whatnot.
But it's not like one day there's going to be this revolution against local currency or national currencies, but more like a death of 1,000 cuts over, you know, the next 50 years or something like that.
Yeah, maybe.
Who knows?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell. It's cool that we get to witness this.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, you guys are providing the data for it. You guys can.
Speaking of usable things that you're interested in making, tell us about this Dune Analytics thing and how that sort of fits in with those interests.
Yeah. So we're about to launch this now. It's still out there, but not really official yet. But what we're doing is I mean, you can phrase it. If you think about all these different analytics sites that pop up, you have like DeFi Pulse or NKR Tools, or, you know, different pages where people see what's happening on the chain. And essentially, we want to be a destination where people can create sites like that within a few minutes. and then people can go back to that and very easily, query fork the underlying queries and then create new versions of that and whatnot. So create a community and a destination where you can get like data at any level, really. So you can have like very high level stuff, or you can have like super deep per DApp or per coin or whatever is interesting to users. And then instead of having like these fragmented destinations where you don't really know what's happening under the hood and all of that, you can have one place where you can actually see the queries, and you can reference across different contracts, whatever, mix and match as you feel like. And then people can, I think what's lacking now is that a lot of things are sort of transparent in the crypto way, in the sense that you can download something, you can do like a bunch of stuff in your command line and put up a database and whatnot, and then you can verify the data yourself. But it's a lot of work. So anyone that sort of don't have the ability or the time or resources to do that effectively doesn't have access to this data. So that's, I think what we're doing is we're actually making it accessible. And if you want to do like the whole shebang, you can. But if you just want to browse around and spend 2 minutes, you can also get something useful out of it.
So this goes into like, I guess, Ethereum, just sort of the way that the blockchain's structured, right? It's very inefficient to sort of query data at the moment.
Yeah.
And so you basically, what you guys do then, to simplify it, is you guys run a giant database where you index everything?
Yeah, you can put it like that. So it's like a Postgres database, and everything is converted into human readable data. So the sort of table names would look like what you put into the Solidity code. And then you have other relevant information like USD prices is obviously one that's very interesting. So instead of, seeing volume of 0x token over the last 2 years, you can actually see UST worth of 0x token going through a smart contract.
Sure.
Yeah. And that made you go on.
Well, so like you were saying, how you're interested in like some of the most basic fundamental things that Ethereum can do, like be a global settlement layer, these type of things. Like, so where does what Doon Analytics is doing fits into the sort of the bigger picture of like a use case for Ethereum?
I think it comes down again to accessibility. So having like a place where you can see what's actually happening. So it would be like Etherscan, but for aggregated information. So, and that means that you can also abstract away some of the complexities. So I would go to Etherscan to check if, okay, Etherscan is a really, really important part of the Ethereum ecosystem, right? Like, if you send me money, how do you prove that? Well, you send me an Etherscan link, right? And that same type of thing, if I want to interact with a smart contract and I want to know if it's safe, if I can see that, okay, so like 10,000 addresses called this function and sent $1 million worth of some token through this function, and it looks like that worked, like you would be able to go to Dune and just like, let's see, okay, I can see this happened, and these people didn't get screwed over, and then you can then probably trust that more than if you just like interact through their website or wherever endpoint you might use. So I think it's very important that there's a place where the data is both transparent but also easily accessible, and you can go in and do this.
Understandable, right? Like it's accessible right now, but not in an easy way, and it also doesn't. It's not readily understandable to make sense of it. And so people can come to Doon Analytics and sort of create these custom ways to aggregate that data and then display it in a understandable, readable, with charts and graphs and this kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think initially, of course, we what we do, like initially will be mostly toward app developers and people that are technical and well immersed in the space, funds, whatever it might be. But then over time, as they explore all this data and do visualizations and share that with the world, hopefully less technical people can also make use of it, because they can go in, you could curate, here are 3 projects I'm interested in, let me pick like this graph and this graph and this graph, and I'll follow this dashboard, and then they can get an overview without being too technical.
Yeah, well, I mean, so you kind of touched on Etherscan a little bit. Kind of like you were saying, Etherscan is such a huge part of all Ethereum. Everybody links to Etherscan.
Where would we be without Etherscan?
No, but that's like sort of the concern here. If Doon Analytics is like trying to be like the Etherscan for more aggregated data and things like that, a lot of people complain about Etherscan because it's really just this closed source, centralized, almost point of failure in the Ethereum ecosystem, because we'd all have to go back to sending.
It's like when the power goes out, everybody has to go back to using candles and stuff. We didn't have Etherscan.
No, it would be. And so like, how do you guys see that? Do you see it as any sort of a responsibility to you guys to sort of make some of these tools more open source, or do you share the concerns about Etherscan?
Yeah, so I do and I don't. I because in one sense, like if you're technical enough, it's not that hard to verify that a transaction happened by running a node or checking, querying some other people's node or whatever it might be. So I think people that are currently in crypto are very concerned with like everything needs to be then decentralized. And by that, I mean like everybody runs like the source code on their actual hardware and like directly interact with the network at the lowest level, which I think is like completely unrealistic for a lot of people. Like going to Etherscan is probably too technical for a lot of like mainstream users even. So I think like there should definitely be people, checking the integrity of Etherscan and using alternatives. But I'm not that concerned that just because it's a website, like it is evil or like it's really bad for the system, because it's like, it makes people can verify transactions without knowing how to interact with the Ethereum network through their command line. And that's actually pretty meaningful. And I find it hard to see a solution that is like in between or is more decentralized, because at the end of the day, consumers, like they want graphical interfaces and they don't want the hassle of, verifying anything. So as for our side of things, so right now we're doing this as like a for-profit business and we're building something. We have some paying clients that like what we're doing. And then we'll see. I mean, of course, we're into the ethos of Ethereum, but at the end of the day, also, I think it's a little underrated. People are very much pushing for open source, but people also need to sustain themselves. So at the end of the day, like right now, there's no business model for like open source product. They can raise like a token sale, but there's often no obvious reason why that token should hold any value. So essentially, you're like charging retail people for your operations, and then they probably lose all their money, or like in many cases that actually was going to happen. And so, of course, like I do think that tokens can have value and will have value if they're like well thought through and whatnot. But I think it's also, we need like a more nuance to, like, people need to get paid to work in this space. Otherwise, it's not going to.
Well, I think that's still a big open question with a lot of open source projects. How do you sort of monetize and give away all your code? But then at the same time, like, Ethereum, for instance, like it wouldn't be, Ethereum's a great example of something where a token does make sense, but like how much of it do you sort of have to rely on the non-profit piece about it? it's tough. But yeah, so I think with Etherscan, we actually have our next guest after you is a guy who's an Ethereum Foundation grantee who's trying to decentralize Etherscan.
Okay.
So
Cool.
I'm sure we will be having that conversation with him.
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
I mean, of course. If I just think that it needs to be very usable for people that's not technical, and if that's solved in a more decentralized way, that's very cool. And I think that's absolutely amazing. But I don't see immediately.
Yeah, baby steps.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. Like but also like, you were talking about like, it's hard for people to run their own nodes and stuff. I'm just curious, what's the size of your database? Like, so if you pull down all of Ethereum,
Yeah.
and then index it, it's probably huge, right?
Yeah, it's 3 terabytes.
Yeah, that's, and
like one caveat though, it's that's a full archive node, and most people don't need that. Like if you just want to verify transactions. I guess there's been like plenty of debate on this about this on Twitter, but there's fairly few reasons for running a full archive node as we do.
Sure. Well, so you guys run your own?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, because that's the other centralization, the big point of failure in the Ethereum ecosystem is everyone uses Infura.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever use Infura, or did you spam them and they made you quit?
No, we haven't really used Infura, actually. No.
Good for you guys.
But yeah, I do agree that I think that's probably more of a problem than Etherscan, I would say.
Yeah. No, I mean, running your own node is tough. It's a job.
Yeah.
And so what? Yeah, I guess so. Okay, as you're looking at doing this, the one question that I had, I've gone through and tried organizing some of the Ethereum stuff into a database as well, and I see them talking about moving to sharding and upgrading Ethereum and everything like that. Like, do you think everything's going to break here shortly, or?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot more complex. It's hard already, and it's going to get worse. That's for sure. I know I'm not the most technical part of the team, but my co-founder, I know he's kind of bearish on 2.0.
And does he think it's happening soon? Like, how are you guys are you preparing for it yet, or are you guys just sort of hand waving it and being like, well, it's probably 4 years off anyway?
No, we're not taking any immediate measures right now. Of course, we keep a little bit of an eye on it, but it's not
sure
on top of this right now.
And then, like, assuming it does scale or doesn't scale, like, are you guys looking at any other blockchains to move to?
I think we're pretty agnostic, but right now it seems like Ethereum is the place with most activity, and of course we need things to happen on chain for our product to be interesting to anyone. So as soon as something emerges that like actually has traction, then real users, then we definitely want to implement that.
Move over to Avalanche.
Haven't heard about it.
Right.
Binance chain.
Yeah.
It's coming out. So no, that's really cool. I think we'll show you our other interview with the guy trying to decentralize Ethereum. So if you have any questions, you have to reach out to us and let us know.
Yeah, no, I think that my general concern is just usability. Like,
sure,
just any step away from basically being a functional website within seconds or within a login. I think right now it's like too much of a burden to put on any mainstream user.
Like, have you guys found it tough getting users for Doon Analytics because of any of those sort of usability issues?
What do you mean usability?
I know you guys are like trying to make it more usable just on the front end piece, but like how are you guys thinking about balancing any of it?
Oh yeah, I guess the neat thing for us is that we're not actually sending transactions or handling people's money in any way. So in that sense, we're, it's not that complex. It's like the standard internet login.
And how long do you wait? Like how real time is your data?
So it's 12 blocks behind head, just
Okay.
to avoid chain reorg. So basically, practically real. Like for analytics purposes, it's real time.
Yeah, that's always the one tough thing whenever you're looking at Etherscan. It's
Yeah.
you don't know, and then it's tough. So.
The deepest we've seen is like 7 blocks reorg. So it's actually, I think a lot of people just check Etherscan and wait for the first block and then type for good, but it might not be.
Sure. And yeah, so this with Dune Analytics. So is this your first startup?
Yeah. So I did like briefly one with my brother years ago, but that was more like idea exploration rather than building too much. Yeah.
Sure. And how's the startup world? Is it as crazy as you would have imagined?
Yeah. I'm hopefully getting a salary tomorrow. I haven't had one since last summer. That's been pretty challenging the last few months, really. But no, it's pretty much like expected. I would say it's really. I usually say it's higher highs and lower lows. Like when you achieve something, it's an amazing feeling, and when things don't go your way, it really really sucks. And it's that's what we signed up to, and I think very character enhancing, like it's a unique experience that you only can get to doing it and through the highs and lows. So it sounds like a cliche, but it's just like you have to do it before you can.
Well, you're also a man of many interests, and the life of a startup developer. How do you balance like the fact that you're on these highs and lows, and you're obviously have to be doing this like super full time, but you also have a ton of interest. Have you had to set all those aside? For the listeners, you're a very avid skier as well. I have to share a little bit of this message that you sent me because it's so great. You were describing your interest, and it reads amazing, at least to me. You were interested in hip hop and music in general, philosophy is science and the limits of our knowledge, our inability to predict the future, control the economy, ineffectiveness and unintended consequences of medicine, how humans lived pre-farming, freestyle skiing, chess. This is my favorite, Scandinavian furniture. I have to ask you about that. Stratechery and reading books, and also running an Ethereum startup as well. To add all that to the mix. So my question was, how do you balance all those interests? Have you put a lot of that aside? And then tell me more about Scandinavian furniture.
I think, of course, it's very, very time-consuming and intense to do a startup. But so one example is that I started working out of a co-working space right next to my apartment, and then I moved to one on the other side of town, so I could take the subway for 20 minutes every day, so I can listen to podcasts and audiobooks. To just like other impulses.
Nice.
Walking 200 meters was not enough. I think
that's great.
It's definitely tough to balance those things. Both Mats and I are fairly focused on making sure that we, let's call it, live like a having like enjoyable everyday life. I think
work-life balance, you know, as they say.
Yeah.
Everybody talks about, but no one really has it.
Yeah. To some extent, you need to have that, and I think that, like, for instance, exercise, like being active, is like super important for your body to function, having enough sleep, and of course you're gonna have to work most of the time, but I think also having other impulses, like from you know, like say hip hop, as I mentioned, like I that whole like culture is very inspiring to me, even though like it's horrible in many ways as well. But I can you know listen to some hip hop song, read about like hip hop, some hip hop act or whatever it might be, and it might inspire me to like achieve something, or how I think about culture, even though we don't have like any other employees right now. We might have soon, and we think about how do we create a culture where people thrive and can achieve things. And I think many great leaders have inspiration from a whole range of different sources.
Sure.
So, yeah.
And I bet it really helps to have on the sort of exercise and outdoorsy, and I can't believe I just said outdoorsy, but on being active, you have a co-founder that shares those interests, yeah, which is, I'm sure, a blessing. When you guys are working together, do you guys have the same interest in hip hop, or is it like a battle of like the playlist in the
I think I'm a little more sort of picky or concerned with music than Mats is. I think we both enjoy music quite a bit, and can have, you know, can have like a lot of different stuff. So yeah, I don't know. We usually have each our headsets so we can put on what
That's
we
true.
like.
Yeah. I would say, Nick, you're the sort of ringleader with the music. Luckily, I'm really into the stuff that you share. And our other co-founder is like an open book. Like she doesn't know a lot of I don't know what to call it other than this like more modern music. She has very narrowed.
She's gonna listen to this and be angry.
No, I'm just saying. Well, she listens to classical music, that kind of thing, right? Very cultured. To her credit, like it's great music she listens to, but like we'll talk about like a classic rock group or like Led Zeppelin or something, and
she'll say who.
Yeah, she'll say who, and we're like, okay, we have to play some Led Zeppelin for you. And it's like it's cool that we get to share that. So we have a good dynamic.
Yeah. Well, what kind of music are you guys into?
Everything in everything. So
well, you shared with me what I learned from you is like the more the progressive rock or like math rock side, which is like I guess you listen to this music because it's good coding music, and I'm not a coder.
That's
and
my
so
coding music is prog rock for me.
Yeah.
When you got to sit down and get work done.
But I like it. It's like instrumental. If I listen to music that I like that has lyrics, I can't work. I don't know how you feel because hip hop is all lyrics. I
can't work to hip hop.
It doesn't work.
That doesn't work. No, it's when I not like need to get hyped. But I have this really interesting site you should check out. It's called generative.fm, and it produces endless ambient music. So I've started using that a lot. There's like 40 pieces there. So they have like a theme, and then you just click play and it generates music and like goes on forever. And then like different vibes to the different tracks. And it's all very like mellow and cool.
So each one of these things like a different algorithm that's just generating something that you've never heard before. Like it's never the same.
Yeah, but it's always like the same type of one. It's very, very nice to work with. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was reading an article like when's the AI going to write the best music, and
Yeah.
so we shall see.
We're almost there with the formulaic nature of a lot of it.
Yeah, no, I'm just excited for whenever all music is, Ethereum can scale, Filecoin works, and we can all just store all the music on the blockchain, and then it's this giant share database. So then everything is free, just streaming off the public blockchain, and then it's impossible for people to charge for music.
Sounds like Napster.
Right.
No, but it's like Napster, but you can't shut it down, and that's like always been like what I think is going to be like the great use case for one of these blockchains.
Well, if we can solve how to monetize open source projects in a way that you can create an economy for that makes sense, wouldn't that just immediately apply to something like this, where we just make all music open source? So
yeah.
The hard thing is that it's not scarce. Like any digital file is just abundant.
But I think music is like different almost from open source software, because like open source software, you really need somebody to sit down and do like work that sucks, like Doon Analytics. Like you need someone to sit down and actually index this whole thing, and let's figure out what these are and how to graph them. Like people don't do that for fun. But like music, I think if you aren't like almost like on a supply demand curve, like if you say like, okay, no one's ever getting paid for music again, I actually don't think you'd see a huge drop in the supply of music.
Yeah.
I still think people would be putting it out there. And, to say that like, okay, if we pay for more music, like, or the music that we're paying for is somehow better than the music we're not paying for. Like, I think that's big, that's not true. Because like, obviously, more of the stuff on the radio is probably measurably worse than some of the stuff that people are putting out for free.
Yeah.
So
I think that's very true.
So like, how do you like, if there's a base of supply that like will always be there regardless of whether or not you pay for it, why are we paying for it? And I don't know, but like I think open source software is different, because like I think there are some things that like if we don't pay for it, no one's going to do it. I think you're seeing that problem with Ethereum now too, with some of the everybody just wants to do like the fun research, and no one wants to actually build a product on it. So, like everyone wants to keep all the people who originally built Ethereum, now they're moving on to ETH 2.0 and, the next fun research topic. Whereas like, hey, we have this cool thing, let's make it usable for people. And it's like, no, that's busy work.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. That's true.
So we have janitors, we have people doing the shit jobs in the sort of rest of the world.
They get paid usually.
Yeah,
exactly. You have to get paid. That says like.
So the janitors of crypto are going to be like the highest paid.
Well, I mean, like, what's the janitor of crypto? I think like the janitor of crypto is like the guy who is, doing code reviews and like putting code comments into ETH 2.0 stuff. Like how do you sort of, it's like, who do you have sort of maintaining these things? Or it's always the question like, okay, well, who's supposed to run the nodes if you don't pay for them? Like, if you don't pay people to run them, who's going to run them? Like now you're assuming people are sort of benevolent, but I don't know if that's.
I haven't like a thing I talked quite a bit about that. I haven't really thought about any crypto context before, but you said janitors that in service, a lot of service professions, people that are sort of less needed are more praised. So say if you go and get a massage, you would be like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, thank you so much. But the person cleaning like the toilet in your office, you don't really like give them too much credit. And so
before I pee, I just am mad. I really just like, I look at and I admire a really clean urinal and I just say, man, whoever did this is amazing. Tell all my friends about it.
I mean, and I mean, if you got the question like, who would you first remove from your life? It's obviously the guy giving you a massage, right? Like
Sure.
you
The luxury.
It better not be a guy giving me a massage.
Yeah, I can't do that.
Guy can mean girl, right?
Yes. No, yeah, it's interesting because you probably do see it in Ethereum. Like, who are the most, loved people in Ethereum? Like, even like Vitalik. Like, Vitalik was necessary, but now Vitalik does like this deep research. He's probably not necessarily needed at all for the daily functioning of Ethereum. Or same with like the people writing articles, or the crypto Twitter gods, which are actually not necessary in any way, shape, or form. So
I wonder what the psychology behind this is. Maybe because anybody can clean a toilet and anybody can take the trash out, but not everybody can like do some magic in the massage parlor. But that sounded really weird. But you know what I mean? Like, maybe we look up to and praise things that are more special, even though they're not as day to day, like pivotal. If people stopped cleaning the toilets, the world would crumble.
Yeah. I guess it's just like you're used to having the basic stuff as well. If you just assume that because like in any civil society, those things are just in place. And then you assume that people take out like someone picking up the trash or running but one thing regarding the like devs, I think one interesting principle is like in politics, maybe I think that people shouldn't it should be, being a politician should be like you're doing a service to the public, and that should be honorable, and you shouldn't have get a lot of pay for doing that, because that's not what it's about. And might be the same thing with Ethereum. Of course, people need to sustain themselves, but it shouldn't be like a super lucrative thing, because it's more of a high morale, like you're contributing to society, and that should be the main motivation.
Well, that's always the other argument there with politicians is that you could say like, okay, well, let's not pay politicians, so you don't pay them anything, and it's purely service. Then obviously only rich people who can support themselves will do it. Or you could say, let's pay them a little bit. Well, okay, well, maybe now they're more open to bribes.
Yeah.
You
can still punish that, though.
What I think you see that with Bitcoin development too. So you saw if nobody's paying for development, well, who does pay for development? Well, it's going to be like Blockstream, for instance. So you're going to have this private company comes in, and then maybe some people in the community don't like the way that corporation is driving Bitcoin development towards their other products that they charge for. So I think it is needed to sort of pay developers on your core developers, especially, and the people doing jobs to make it good. But I mean, how much and how you structure that. I know Ethereum, for instance, they're doing the grants now to try and fund core development, and they sort of get a lot of flack for that, just because do grants ever work to build anything is the question. And maybe not, or should they just centralize sort of the development and hire a bunch of Google engineers for millions of dollars and build it? I don't know.
It's a really, really hard problem.
Yeah.
Anyway. I mean, it's a really old one as well, right? Just how.
Yeah, I think it's older than Ethereum. So for sure. So okay, well, we're coming up on the hour here.
We cannot end without talking about the Scandinavian furniture.
Okay.
Our listeners will be very upset.
So no,
What is Scandinavian furniture? What makes it unique?
I think it's fairly minimalistic, just the way of designing furniture. So I just think it looks nice, really. So to be honest, like, not to be rude, but I think like an average Scandinavian home looks more pretty than an average American one.
So insulted.
Yeah.
American furniture is like too clunky. Like it's like thick and heavy and like
Americans themselves. We're all supersized.
While a bunch of Scandinavians are pretty slick and minimalistic. I don't know. This is.
All right. Well.
No, that's so. It's like IKEA.
IKEA is pretty. I think IKEA is a little underrated. But,
yeah. You have to come up with a better answer for when some girl asks you that off of your Tinder profile.
That better be on your Tinder profile.
I think design is really important. Also, or let me put it in this is a digression, but I think a lot of people are inclined to say that, you know, clothes or material stuff is not important to them. But at the end of the day, like given that you have the money to sustain yourself, like what's worth spending money on? And I think it's really hard. Or people are very judgmental in that regard and think that's weird. Like if you care about t-shirts, then okay, buy t-shirts and then don't buy like nice food or whatever. And people are so easily saying, oh, why that's so dumb to spend money on, you know, a nice share. And then okay, so how do you spend your money? Like, what's important? I think as soon as you go above like the basic stuff, that's like a really, really hard question, I would say, to say, oh, this is better than that. Like, maybe for you, but
yeah, whatever makes you happy.
Yeah.
And I think it's not t-shirts in all of our cases, since we're all wearing free t-shirts. So anyway,
when you go on the calls in the Ethereum space and people are not wearing hackathon t-shirts, then we know that we've gone somewhere.
Yeah, we had a guy on who wore a suit, and we're like, "What is going on?"
So, whatever maybe suits make him happy.
Yes. Yeah, right.
Fredrik, yeah, thanks for coming on. This was a blast.
Yeah, man.
We will see you soon, I'm sure. Hopefully you'll be out here, or I know I'll see you in San Francisco in a few weeks. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was great.
Great fun. Thanks for inviting me.
All right, talk to you soon.
Sure. See ya.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.